everybody, to our online program from the Sunshine Coast Health Centre up here in Powell River, BC. And we've been talking about youth and addiction. And there are a lot of lessons we can learn about why some people succumb to addiction. We mentioned before on a previous program that 91% of the people, at least in Canada, these are stats from Canada, 91% of the young people in Canada have admitted to being intoxicated with alcohol. Pretty high number, and almost 40% with marijuana. Right? So these are very high numbers, right? And yet, we know that everybody intoxicated with alcohol is not going to become an alcoholic. Just like all the young people who may have experimented with marijuana or something, they're not going to become addicted to marijuana. So how do we figure out who's going to become addicted? Who's going to succumb to this desire to keep using drugs, even though they know it's going to lead to like some pretty bad consequences? Right? So one of the things we've discovered about this is that a lot of young people who are vulnerable to the addiction, they seem to really not have a good understanding of themselves, even as young people. And this is kind of interesting, right? Now, we expect, of course, young people not really to know themselves. That's why teenagers do all that experimenting, right? They'll try on different roles to see if they fit. But for most young people, at least they have some dream, even if it's wildly impossible. Like, I want to grow up and play in the NFL or the NHL. Well, the chances of that are pretty low. But at least they have some passion, something that they have this dream about. And it's interesting with people who are vulnerable to addictions that very often they don't even have that. Like, it's a very curious thing. They don't really have these dreams that they think about and dream careers and things like that. A second thing they don't have, they don't seem to have really goals that come from within them. Sometimes when we talk to the young people and they tell us their goals, and we ask them, where did you get these goals from? They very often tell us it's from their parents or what they think their parents want them to do. So it's not theirs. These goals that they talk about are actually from their parents or maybe from relatives, people like that. So that's interesting. Eh? And then the third thing that they seem to be lacking is really solid friendships, really good relationships. Sure, they may have lots of people they can hang out with, but they would be more people that we would call acquaintances. And again, this isn't 100%, nothing like that, but there's just this tendency for a lot of people. And so many of them tell us that they actually feel different than others, or they feel alone, things like that. So this speaks to this really lack of good, close emotional connections with others. Anyway, these three things are kind of interesting, right? Because we also find these three things in adults who are in active addiction and early recovery. And so maybe this is a clue to why some young people are vulnerable to addiction, is that they're lacking a good awareness of even dreams of what they want, any sort of passion. They seem to lack goals that belong to them. Their goals very often are, goals of the family or some relative or somebody else. And the third thing is they seem to have sort of superficial relationships. So this is very interesting lessons that we're learning from the young people. And then when we ask them, well, what are the payoffs of doing drugs? It's rather kind of interesting because a lot of them tell us, well, they get some insight into themselves, or they feel that maybe if they're taking a drug like ecstasy at a rave or something, that they feel a connection with others. I mean, these are quite interesting. It's almost like they're using the drug as a substitute for these things missing in their lives. Anyway, that's this week's online program, and we'll be back next week with another topic on this subject of youth and addiction.